Welcome to the Gold Medal Girls podcast, part of the Women's Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Delaney Thibodeau. Gold Medal Girls is all about sharing the experiences of women in sports, including athletes, coaches, trainers, sports psychologists, executives, and tons more. We're here to promote these amazing people to build more and more support for women in sports. Be sure to listen as episodes will drop every other Tuesday, and I'll be interviewing a woman in athletics so we can learn more about their lives and amplify their voices. I hope you're as excited as I am to hear what they have to say. And without further ado, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the first ever episode of Gold Medal Girls. In this episode, I talk with Izzy Tremonte. She is a Canadian powerlifter, a friend, and is also a researcher working towards her PhD at the University of Toronto. We discuss the ins and outs of powerlifting, training, and competitions, what it's like to bounce back from injuries, the mental tools she uses to stay at the top of her game, and how her research about body image and body appreciation is woven into her experiences as an athlete. This episode was honestly super exciting to record. I learned a lot about powerlifting, which is not a sport that I knew a ton about going into the interview. I also love to talk about research any and all of the time, and I think that you'll find Izzy's work is super interesting too. Izzy,
Hello.
Izzy Tremonte, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
I'm so happy to have you here. This is the first episode we're recording, so this is so exciting.
No pressure for either of us.
No pressure at all. It's totally fine. So we're here to talk about your life as an athlete and the research that you do today as well.
Basically, that's my entire life for the most
Your whole
part.
identity.
Whole identity is in both of those things.
Perfect. We're going to capture it in an hour. It's
Love
going to be
it.
great.
Love it.
Amazing. So if you could start by telling us, what is your main sport?
Right now, I currently compete in powerlifting for the most part. And that's where I spend most of my sport time, I would say. I like to dabble in non-competitively, recreational, pickleball.
Pickleball.
A little bit of curling. Me and my boyfriend curl sometimes. So yeah, I'm open to any sports, but I typically compete in powerlifting.
You've got the summer sports, the winter sports, the
All of
indoor
them.
sports,
All of
the
them.
racket sports.
Yes, yes.
Amazing. And what kind of competitions do you do with powerlifting?
There's different levels of competition. You have to qualify, like most sports. And I also really enjoy doing mock meets, just at the gym with a group of people. And it's kind of like a day where you can test where your PRs are, see how your training's been going. It doesn't go on a record book or anything, but it's just a fun environment to be in with a group of people, and everyone's just lifting heavy at the gym on a random Sunday afternoon or something.
Kind of like an exhibition.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
There's no real judging. Someone's just kind of there to facilitate it.
Yeah.
And you can just practice and give it a little test and see how it goes.
Okay. And how many of those per competitive season, I guess, would you do?
It really just depends. I in the sport, I'm not trying to be a world competitor. I just don't have the time or resources to dedicate to that at this point in my life. The highest level I've competed at is the provincial level. And then it just got really expensive to carry on from there. Yeah. And I'm pretty content with reaching that level and having fun with it for the most part. So it just really depends on what's available, and a lot of things have changed since the pandemic. Okay. So it used to be a lot more competitions in a year, and it's kind of dialed back, and it's more so just taking the path to get to qualifications for nationals seems to be the most available competitions right now.
Okay.
So yeah, there's typically I want to say 2 to 3 big competitions a year. And then you can kind of space them out as you see fit. It's hard to compete if you're cutting weight a lot as well. So it just really depends on what your goals are, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. And so if you could just describe for people who may not know what cutting weight means.
Yeah, so it's a super fun process.
She says sarcastically.
So there's predefined weight categories in the sport of powerlifting, like other sports. A lot of combat sports have those predefined weight classes as well. And you basically choose where you want to compete and what weight class you want to compete in. And then if you currently don't weigh that correct weight, you have to lose weight in order to meet the boundaries of that weight class. So, I mean, I'd like to lose no more than 5 pounds when I'm preparing for competition, which is about 2.5 kilos. But I mean, some people will cut upwards of 5 to 8 kilos, depending on how much time they have and how comfortable they feel losing body weight, because it's
Yeah.
not an easy process.
No, I can imagine that it's not. And who decides, I guess, which weight class you go into? Is that your decision? Is that like a coach's decision?
I had a really, when I was working with a coach, I'm not right now because I'm just not like in the trenches with getting ready for a competition. But he was very good at being like, it's whatever you want. But that was just my experience. And I know that it can be different for everyone.
Yeah.
It's based on your goals. My goal was to lift as much as I could in the competition. I wanted to push myself, hit some PRs, see what that looked like. And that required me to stay at a heavier body weight because I think
Mhm.
losing, I would have had to have lost about 6 to 7 pounds to get to my regular weight class at that time.
Mhm.
And I just didn't feel like that would be conducive to the most amount of strength that I would be able to output at a competition.
Okay, yeah, so that ratio kind of,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. When it gets more competitive, and when people are competing at the higher levels, they will try to maximize the ratio between strength and weight. And I have gotten burned at competitions before.
Mm.
It was a tie between how much weight we lifted, and I got burned because I weighed in 1 kilo heavier. I was
Oh.
still in my weight class, but I was 1 kilo heavier than the other competitor. So
Mhm.
it just really depends on who's there that day and who shows up and how they compete too. So.
Yeah, definitely. And when did you start powerlifting?
I officially competed for the first time in 2019. Prior to that, I had been like training, not necessarily for powerlifting, but just like training in the gym, lifting heavy because I really enjoyed it for about 4 years before that. So I think I like built up my strength prior to, and then I learned what powerlifting was back in 2018, because all I really knew was bodybuilding at the time, and that just like didn't appeal to me. And I was just like, I just like lifting heavy things. And then I met some other people who were like, oh, like you're pretty strong. This is like a sport that you might be interested in. And I was like, oh, this is really fun. And I met a lot of friends in the space. And then I was like, oh, like I can actually compete and just see what happens, give it a whirl. So yeah, back in 2019, which was whatever many years ago
Too
at
long
this
ago. We
time.
don't need we don't need to talk about that. And what differentiates powerlifting from bodybuilding, from Olympic weightlifting, all the picking up heavy things
Yes.
sports?
So, the way I differentiate them, the most simple way between powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, the weight never goes above your head when you compete. Olympic weightlifting, the weight always goes above the shoulders over your head. Olympic weightlifting has 2 lifts, powerlifting has 3 lifts when you actually compete in competition. And then bodybuilding, there's no display of strength when you're actually competing in a bodybuilding competition.
Mhm.
You're getting judged purely on aesthetics.
Okay.
So they might do powerlifting and Olympic lifting lifts in their training. However, it doesn't matter how much they can lift. It just depends on what they aesthetically look like.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And in powerlifting, do you feel any pressures around the aesthetics while you're lifting?
Um, like not really. I think because it's beneficial to be larger in powerlifting to, again, like if you want to move mass, you need to weigh more.
Right.
So it's beneficial to be larger. Um, I think at being a woman, there are societal pressures though that dictate how you feel in your body being in this sport, that the body in the sport doesn't necessarily translate to a societal body. So I think that's more where I feel the pressure rather than being in the sport because everyone is all shapes and sizes and it doesn't as much seem like it matters what you look like. It's people are just happy that you're competing, having a good time and lifting the most that you can lift.
Right. Well, I mean that's good, I guess, and we'll come back to the societal body image
Yes.
pressures a little bit
Yes.
later. But as you were getting started in powerlifting, I know you talked about you had some friends who were kind of into it. Who were the biggest influencers and just like influential factors for why you kind of landed with powerlifting?
At the time, I was transitioning. Well, I was still dancing, so I danced for 14, 15 years, from like very young age.
Yeah.
And I kind of was falling out of like passion, enjoyment with dance. And I was starting to really enjoy going to the gym and just like lifting heavy. And so it was a very, I'll say natural transition, but a lot of people are like, how do you go from being a ballerina to a power lifter? Might not seem as natural. But it was just like a natural thing where I found enjoyment in powerlifting and I was like, oh, this is something fun to really challenge myself. So I think the time in my life was a big factor. And also just like my family was a really big supporter of just whatever makes you happy and you feel like it's something fun that you're enjoying and you're not obviously being safe and not hurting yourself, then like have at it and go for it. I've been really lucky to have a good support system from like family that way as well.
It's so nice to have people who you can you can rely on them to have your back
Exactly.
and things like that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So what challenges, if any, did you face as you landed on powerlifting?
Yeah, I have to like think back to the beginning. I mean, the injuries didn't come until later.
Okay.
We'll just put it there. I think when you first get into it, like especially just strength training in general, people always talk about, oh, like the newbie gains, and it's so easy to, oh, add 5 pounds, add 5 pounds, add 5 pounds. Like you're continually increasing the amount of weight that you can lift, and it's very exciting and very motivating. Eventually that comes to a roaring halt. So I think I would say like a year and a half into it is when I started to realize like you're not always increasing in like a linear fashion. There's ups and downs, just like anything in life. So I think that was like a big thing where it's like, oh, you have to check your motivation when like you go to the gym and today's just not the day for lifting heavy.
Mhm.
Um, and there's not a lot of equipment that you need. You wear a super cute singlet and you have to wear some knee-high socks when you're deadlifting.
Okay.
So other than like the equipment, and just like getting yourself set up and feeling comfortable in those types of things, there wasn't really a lot. Yeah, the injuries came later, and I mean, we can talk about that now or we can talk about it later, but
Yeah.
it's really hard on your body. And obviously I'm not getting any younger. So I feel like every year is like, oh, strength training and going to the gym should be something that's healthy and something that makes me feel good. And sometimes powerlifting doesn't make your body feel very good. So it's like reminding yourself that like when you need to take a step back, it's okay to take a step back and just like take 2 years or a year or whatever to reevaluate your health and like your actual physical health of your body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of like back problems for a little while. And then I had surgery about 2 years ago, and although it was a minor surgery,
A minor surgery.
yeah, as my appendix burst and they had to go in and clean everything up. Um, it took me a lot longer to like recover physically from the surgery. And so it just like was a very good time to just check myself and remind myself that like, oh, core strength is really important. Maybe we need to like go back to the basics. So that's kind of what I've been working on for the last, I want to say like 1.5 years. Is just like really getting back to like foundational exercise training and letting my body and my nervous system, you really start to feel it in your nervous system. Like you feel a lot of fatigue. Your joints get really tired and just, yeah, it just takes a toll on your body. And I commend the people who can like continually compete in the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's you're lifting heavy, and
Yeah.
that obviously is going to do a lot to your body, especially when you're bouncing back from an injury and a
Yeah.
minor quote unquote surgery. Just to go back to baseline, I imagine obviously takes a lot of time anyway, and then to
Mhm.
get back to a competitive place, it's going to take
Yes.
even more time and probably nerves as you're getting back
Yes.
into it.
Yeah. It's been a journey, but it's been a lot of fun to kind of like I put the belt aside, so I haven't been lifting with a belt. And I've gotten back to close enough to like pre-surgery lifts without a belt. So I feel pretty comfortable now. Um, and I'm pretty happy with like the progress that I've made. So I'm like ready to start training again to compete, but it definitely took some time to get there. And
Yeah.
I think that's like a big barrier that I want to say, like just anecdotally, most people probably face is that you don't realize the toll that it takes on your body.
Mhm.
Just like when you're all having so much fun going to the gym and whatnot. So
Yeah, definitely. And when I mean, now you're kind of coming off of that recovery phase, getting back to a place where you're happy with how things are going without the belt.
yeah.
What is your routine for training, balancing days off with rest and also, making progress in the gym?
Yeah, so I typically I like to go to the gym 5 days a week. Um, 4 to 5 is like kind of my sweet spot, I think. Because I'm like a smaller individual, I still benefit from going multiple days and I can still kind of push myself for the most part.
Mhm.
Because I'm lifting heavy, but not lifting like as heavy as some of the like heavier weight people would be lifting. So my body can still handle it, and I do enjoy going to the gym about 5 days a week. So that's like what my typical routine looks like, whether I'm training or preparing for a competition.
Okay.
It's kind of like a funny sport because it's different from like hockey or soccer, where it's like you go to the gym to get stronger in your sport, but your sport practice actually looks completely different than your
Right.
gym
Yeah,
training.
your skills that you're actually competing with are totally
Exactly.
different. Yeah, for you, you're probably practicing those three lifts. I imagine you're doing other things too,
Yes.
but
Yeah, so right now I focus like mostly my 3 lifts are in my 5 day split at some point.
Mhm.
And then I'm focusing a little bit more on like accessory work just to complement those 3 lifts.
Yeah.
And then as I would prepare for a competition, it would get a lot more focused on essentially doing what I would be doing in competition. So moving from 10 repetitions down to 5, and then eventually down to that like 1 rep max,
Mhm.
getting as close as possible, just to prime your body for that type of execution when you go to competition.
Mhm.
Honestly, I don't really change my routine too much. Like I'm a very routine oriented person
Yeah.
that works well for me. And I feel like you're smiling, and I feel like
I
that also
yeah,
probably works well for you.
very much a creature of habit, yes.
Yeah. So like whether I'm just training, just going to the gym, or actually preparing for a competition, like I like to go to the gym in the morning. I like to get my lift in before my day starts. I like to eat my 3 meals and snacks throughout the day. Like I like to get to bed by a certain time.
Mhm.
And it just works for me in like an
Yeah.
everyday functional perspective. So why change it when I'm
Yeah.
preparing for a competition?
Absolutely. And so I guess if you could walk me through what a competition looks like, because you're splitting up those lifts between your split at the gym, but in
Hmm.
a competition, is it one day? Is it the weekend? Like how does that feel, I guess, doing all the lead up to the competition with kind of splitting everything up and then the day of you're lifting as heavy as you possibly can, three very different lifts all at the same time.
Yes, and full body lifts, like whole body being included in all 3 lifts, I would argue. Some
Yeah.
people might argue against that, but I would say your full body's included. You prepare for that in the same way that you, like a runner would prepare for a marathon, in
Hmm.
that like you practice, right? So you get as close to game day or competition day as possible. So even though I have a 5 day split, as I get closer and closer to competition, I will lift all 3 lifts in a training session.
Okay.
And that will be all that I do. So, like for example, like a month out, you really start to taper off of accessory work. It's just if it's not being used in competition, it doesn't really have a functional purpose in your training, other than keeping you healthy and keeping you moving. So yeah, you really start to taper back. And I'm sometimes drop it down to 4 days a week, just depending on like how I'm feeling and what that kind of looks like. And then, although you are lifting all 3 lifts in one session, you typically focus on, okay, maybe this is a bench session today. So I will do my squat, then I will focus on bench because that's going to be my heavy one for the day, and then finish off with deadlifts or something that is like a variation of a deadlift. And then I kind of rotate that through as I'm preparing. The actual day of competition is all 3 lifts in one day in your lifting session, whatever time of the day that is.
Hmm.
And it goes by very quickly. There's in the federation I compete in, there's a lot of rules around when you can weigh in, how long a heat, I will call it, should take. And that's just to keep the lifter warm and healthy in between
Hmm.
attempts.
Yeah.
So for me, what my competition day typically looks like, I show up, we have to weigh in 2 hours prior to. You get one attempt essentially to weigh in, and I think the rules have kind of changed around this since the last time I competed. You can you get like, I think 30 minutes and then you can reattempt.
Okay.
But they want to eliminate people doing like very quick weight loss methods that are unhealthy. So 2 hours before, you have to weigh in within your weight class in front of a judge. Once you get the check mark of approval, you basically have 2 hours to warm yourself up and get ready to do the first lift, which is always squats. You get 3 attempts of squat, and then you get time to warm up for the next lift, which is bench. Same thing, 3 attempts, and then time again. And deadlifts are the last one, and you get 3 attempts with those. The goal is obviously each attempt, you want it to be gradually heavier. If you pick your first attempt and you miss it, you cannot go down in weight.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a mind game that you play with yourself.
Right.
You want to pick the first weight to be something that you're comfortable with on a bad day is like the best kind of way to go about it.
I was gonna say, so that's something that like you know pretty much for sure you've
Yes.
succeeded at with practicing, and that's where you're gonna start with.
Essentially, yeah. You want, I mean, set yourself up for success, because then now you miss your squat. You can't change your weight to go lower. Maybe you're just having an off day. You want to be in the competition essentially, and you don't want to count yourself out for that second and third attempt of squat, because if you don't make it, that's your competition right there. So you have to at least hit 1 attempt of each lift successfully to kind of keep going through the competition and be part of the scoring.
And I'm not sure if this has ever happened to you, but if you do miss that first attempt, what would somebody be telling themselves? Like, what strategies should someone use to kind of keep themselves in the competition, not let themselves just be totally counted out?
It's never happened to me, luckily.
Ooh.
We'll knock on wood. But I have seen it happen to other people, and you can see like the mind games start to just like go right away.
Yeah, of course.
And I think what a lot of people do is you just remind yourself that like, this is a weight I've lifted before. I can do it. A lot of people, they have someone with them. Hopefully you've taken a video and you can quickly watch. And sometimes it's something as simple as like, oh, my feet were just in a weird position on that. Like I just kind of, and like you make one little tweak, and I've seen people go out the second time and just, they get right back in it.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a mind game to play, and just, I think it's like reminding yourself of like, okay, it happened, whatever. I need to be present in the next thing that I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And not dwelling on what just happened in the previous attempt.
Do you have a favorite lift of the 3? Like, are you totally gassed by the time you get to the deadlift, or are you excited because it's the last one?
I have a very love-hate relationship with deadlifts. Not just because it's the last lift, but just because it's typically the hardest on like my back. So it's always like a reminder that like, oh, make sure everything is in the right position before you lift the weight off the floor. So yeah, I have a love-hate with deadlifts. They are what they are. It sucks that they're at the end. Why they put the hardest one at the end? I mean, it makes sense. My favorite lift is the bench press, actually.
Okay.
I feel like it's the most technical lift out of all of them. And one small change can make a big difference, either positively or negatively, for the bench press. And for some reason, I don't know if I have like short arms like I excel at the bench press in comparison to other people in my weight class. And so it just makes me feel good that like, oh, I am lifting. They put you in order of how much weight you're lifting, because obviously as the next person goes, the people are just adding more and more weight to the bar. So typically when I compete, you're competing with sometimes 2 weight classes in the same heat. So it's always fun when you are lifting after the people in a heavier weight class than you. And that only has ever happened for me when I do bench press.
Okay.
So it just gives me a little confidence boost, and I feel like anything that can give you confidence, you might as well lean into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm thinking about how you said that sometimes the little things can make such a big difference positively or negatively. I love seeing videos people make where they like kind of salsa dance on like under a squat rack or something, as like trying to place their feet properly. Is there a similar sort of setup with your hands for the bench press, or do you kind of know like, I'm gonna lock in right here, I know exactly what I'm doing?
Hands, yes. The bar has like rings on it.
Okay.
And so there are rules about how far out your hands can be, but I know that like my ring finger goes on that ring. That's just like the
Okay.
best setup for me personally. And I have adapted my bench press technique over the years. I used to use like a lot of a more of a wider stance with my feet on the floor. And now I've adapted it to I sort of like hug the bench with my knees and my feet are closer together. There's a lot of power that comes from your feet through the floor when you bench press, which translate into the movement of your
Right.
like to get the bar off your chest and back to the rack. So that's kind of once you can hone in on that technique for the bench press, I feel like you can make a lot of progress rapidly. And for me personally, if I bench press 4 days a week, that's when I see the most progress.
Okay.
Other people, it's just way too taxing. Like obviously it's a smaller muscle group,
Right.
than lifting with your legs. But yeah, I've kind of like found out that that's what works best for me, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun, and it doesn't hurt my back typically. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Which, I mean, hey, anything that doesn't hurt your back and is fun and you're good at it, again, lean into it.
yes, exactly.
And so with the deadlift, again, it's at the end, it's one of the hardest lifts. And with your back, in a competition, are you lifting with or without a belt? And can you describe again for anybody who might not know what the value of using or not using a belt would be?
Yeah, so I lift squat and deadlift with my belt. I don't use it for bench. Some people do, but I'm just like don't need it for the bench press. And typically what the belt is used for, a lot of people think like you want your belt as tight as possible. It's going to support your back. With the belt, I can do no wrong. And that's definitely the wrong approach to go into that, like using a belt. It is used for, I use it as like a cueing mechanism to remind myself to breathe correctly.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is typically you want to be able to fit like at least 2 fingers, if not your full hand, like somewhere in your belt.
Okay.
So it's not completely compressed against your skin. And the easiest way is like as when you're inflating a balloon, it inflates 360. You want to be inflating the core and from the front and the back 360. So typically you will hold your breath when you're completing your lift, or I hold my breath anyway the entire time. So you take a nice big deep breath, you get that full 360-degree expansion throughout all parts of your abdominal wall and your back. And the belt is there to, once you hit that belt cavity and you hit the outsides of the belt, you like feel
some resistance.
Yeah, that's like a good way to put it. And it's like that reminder that you are doing the breathing technique correctly, and hopefully your lift will be the most supported that it can be.
Right.
So yeah, I use it for the squat and for the deadlift.
Okay.
And then just not for bench because it just like doesn't do anything for me. But some people who lift like the big, I'm just thinking of like the big guys, they wear their belts when they bench. They've got like 500 plus pounds on the rack. They need that extra.
Yeah, little maybe just even like kinesthetic reminder of where they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean like I think like I thought when I first started using a belt, I'm going to put a belt on and I'm going to be able to lift all this extra weight.
Yeah.
And if you don't maximize the function of the belt, it's really just a fancy accessory that you're wearing.
How much say do you have in a competition over like what you're wearing, what kind of belt you're using? Like, do you get to make it cute?
Yeah, you can. Like, I mean, as cute as a singlet can be.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I love the purple is my favorite color, so like my belt is purple. You're allowed to wear like socks. For deadlift, your socks have to come up to your knees, and that's just to prevent blood from getting on the bar for the most part.
Okay.
Well, it grazes against the shins quite often.
Right.
So yeah, that's just like a, safety concern, health concern for everyone. So yeah, the deadlift socks are not the cutest, I will admit. You can wear really like whatever shoes you want as long as they like you're not having laces flying everywhere.
Right.
So yeah, you can kind of pick your color scheme. So I try to have like my little purple accents. But yeah, the singlet will always be the focal point, and that's not the cutest piece of equipment.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Do you have any rituals or superstitions when you go into a competition?
I try not to be that person. So, again, very routine. I follow the same warm up that I do in the gym. It's my warm up because it works. Let's not change anything the day of competition. And a lot of people eat like sweet things like gummy bears, gummy worms. Um, those things just like make my stomach upset on a regular day.
Okay.
So I try not to put myself into that position on competition day.
Why would you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a little bit of sugar is always great. So just like things that I know make me feel good.
Yeah.
That don't actually make my stomach upset, but still give me that like little sugar kind
Right.
of rush that you
Little
need.
boost.
Yeah.
And so you're weighing in 2 hours before you start lifting. Are you fueling after that?
Yes.
Okay.
I typically, because I typically compete in a lower weight class for women. I typically am the first lifting session of the day. So I have the luxury that a lot of the time my weigh-ins are at like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
So I just don't eat before I go for a weigh-in.
Okay.
Some people, their weigh-ins are at 4 o'clock at night. So like it just really depends on what works for you. For me, if I were to eat until 4 o'clock, I would probably be outside of my weight class. So it really just depends.
Okay.
But yeah, I typically weigh in and then immediately carbs are shoved into my body and water and just everything.
Yeah, fettuccine Alfredo.
Yes.
Heavy cream.
Heavy cream, lots of dairy. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's how you're gonna feel good in a singlet.
Yeah.
Okay. So we both study body image. How do you see body image intersecting with your experiences that you've had in powerlifting and in sports generally?
Yeah, with my own experiences, definitely kind of like I mentioned before, just like the societal pressures of like what it means to have a body as a woman and what that should look like and the way that like the media dictates what that should look like. But then also recognizing that within sport, sometimes your body needs to look a little bit different than that in order to perform and do the functions that are required for your sport. So almost it's like putting aside those societal expectations and just recognizing that your body can do all these wonderful and really cool and amazing things. And like it's okay if you don't fit into those pair of jeans, or maybe you have to alter your jeans to look a little differently or whatever, or like who cares what the number on your clothes is. I think those were like a lot of things I had to and I'm still like I'm not saying that I've worked it all out in my brain, but those are like a lot of the things that I think I struggle with like on a regular basis. Um, and I don't know if that's ever going to go away, but I think it's okay to feel that way. And I think that's what got me really interested in like, well, like how do people feel about their bodies within sport? And I think a lot of the times we put athletes on a pedestal, and think that they are like these superhuman above and beyond, and they don't feel these real people emotions per se. And I think you just have to remember that like it's an experience that everybody has.
Yeah.
To maybe not feel the greatest about your body, but then also recognize that your body is a amazing tool and a wonderful thing that is used in sport on a regular basis. Um, and what really got me into like the whole body image in sport was before I started powerlifting, I was again, I kind of only knew what bodybuilding was. And I was like, aren't people dieting for bodybuilding just a proxy for like some sort of disordered behaviors? Because I was in psych and I was learning all about like abnormal psychology. So it was top of mind. And I was really interested in like, is this actually different from a disordered behavior that someone who has an actual diagnosis might be struggling with as well? And are we labeling it as okay or healthy because it's in an exercise and sport space?
Yeah.
So I got really interested in sort of the negatives that were associated with participating in these like weight class type sports.
Yeah.
And that sort of drove my initial interest in research. And at first it didn't really go anywhere. I took a little bit of time off after undergrad, but I did enjoy kind of like looking into these things and just like talking to people about it. And I was like, oh, there seems like there is a need, or just like a lot of people are talking about these types of things. And that's sort of what drove the impetus for me going back to school and just diving into my master's. And like I came ready, I had my question. I was super interested in the association between cutting weight, losing weight for competition, and just negative outcomes. Like, how do people feel about their body? How do they feel mentally? Like, what is actually happening as somebody prepares for a competition and is losing weight? Because preparing for a competition is hard enough on its own.
Yeah.
Let's add this extra thing on top of it, and what happens. And so that kind of led me to this research, body image, sport, that whole umbrella that you and I are both
Yes.
diving through.
So happy to be in, even though it's a bummer of a topic sometimes.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about the societal pressures around body image, maybe especially for women in sport. Not to say that men in sport don't have body image pressures as well.
Right.
But I do think it's really interesting the way that, women athletes, they're people outside of being athletes. So there's the societal pressures that are, kind of prevalent globally for people, but then they do also have these kind of sport specific things that they're under, especially in these weight class sports where you do have to weigh in. And then maybe you are, like you said earlier, like weighing in at 4 p.m. and it's like, well, how do you decide to eat before that? Do you not? And then, how do you physically feel if you haven't been eating all day till 4 o'clock? You get to 4 o'clock and then you have your only food that day maybe to do your lift. Like, what does that kind of do then to the performance of sport? I think it's so interesting.
Yeah, I didn't look at performance in my study.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I could have pulled variables because like those are all available online, how people performed. And I mean, I might have been one of those researchers who was like, how people feel in sport is also important, as is performance.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of sport research is driven by performance. But what I did find was, as I was like deep diving into my research, was what most other researchers are focusing on are the more physical things.
Yeah.
So again, people's performance, which is super important, and I don't want to discount that. Like that's why we do sport. But I mean, I think to perform well, you need to also feel well. And if we're not understanding how that's related to anything that you're doing in sport, then we're not going to know how to manipulate it to then hopefully improve someone's performance at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you and I come from a similar perspective with our research. As my research is about body image and the ability to kind of control your attention in sport, with all these different kind of up and down things in your head as an athlete. Like never mind the performance part. In some ways, it's like it's the psychology of the mental game that athletes are playing constantly. And I know you do some work with body appreciation, kind of maybe the flip of what some people think of when they think of body image.
Yeah, for sure.
If you could kind of describe what body appreciation is and maybe how you see it in your sport for yourself or with others.
Yeah, so like I said, I really focus on the negatives, negative mental health, negative body image. I would say I'm a little bit more pessimistic in my everyday life. And when I got into my master's, my supervisor was the complete opposite. And she was like, well, maybe people feel like good about themselves. And I was like,
what if people actually like their body?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I'd really just opened up this entire new realm of like research that I started to learn a lot more about. And I thought was super interesting, and was like, oh, like if we take this more positive approach to things, not to discount the negatives at all, but understanding that both can exist and both are reasonable experiences to have. How can we capitalize on the positives and improve whatever outcomes we're looking for? And body appreciation takes that approach. It's a focus on respecting and loving your body for not only the way that it looks, but also what it can do, how you feel when you are participating in things that your body is doing. Are you present in the moment? A lot of that is captured within this more like positive body image space. And I think we see on social media a lot as well, people talking about body positivity, body acceptance. And I mean, those might not be terms that we necessarily use when we talk about it in research, but I think there is parallels and applicability.
So the social media landscape lately, I think the research generally tells us is negative for people in terms of the outcomes. There's a lot of comparisons that go on. That's true, across age groups, genders, athletes, non-athletes, levels of competition. It does seem to be that social media in general is negative as far as body image is concerned. But I do think there are some people who are doing their best to kind of present a more authentic version of themselves and trying to be positive in how they discuss body image. Do you think that there's value in athletes trying to connect with those people, or do you think that maybe social media in general for athletes, maybe we should be avoiding it?
No, I think we like lean into it. Like I said before, I think until like I want to say within the last like maybe like 5 to 10 years, we've really put athletes on a pedestal. And I mean, they do a lot of wonderful things with their body that like seem superhuman. And so I totally can see why society feels that way. But I think seeing that they struggle with how they feel about their body, or you know what, like maybe when you're not in peak training, your body doesn't look the way that it's presented on TV or in like TSN, Sports Center, whatever news program is presenting these bodies. It's nice to see that it doesn't always appear that way. And there are ebbs and flows. And I think that just shows that they are real people too. And it makes them more authentic and more transparent. And it's just easier to connect with things like that.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that it's arguably more valuable for people to share their struggles with it than to be kind of continuing this facade of everything's positive all the time, never have a bad day. Yeah. I deserve this big pedestal because everything is good all the time. Whereas that's just so much not the reality for nearly everybody, at least sometimes.
Yes.
So I do really respect the people who are being a little bit more upfront about the challenges that they have.
Yeah.
It's more relatable, and I think arguably more beneficial for people.
And just, it's nice to see diverse bodies as well.
Yes.
I think we get stuck in this idea that your body must look a certain type of way to be ex-athlete.
Yes.
And I think like that's just, there's no data to support that currently that I can think of anyway.
No, me either.
So if there is, I would love to read it. But I just think that that feeds into the stereotypes and just further perpetuates these like harmful stigma and ideas that people have about what an athlete's body should look like. And just seeing diverse bodies in sport is just such like a wonderful thing, and that they all can be appreciated and they're all successful in what they do.
Yeah.
So I think social media is a great tool for things like that as well.
Absolutely. I think it's the intentionality that you go into it with. And I think, user beware, I guess, as far as with what you're interacting with. Because I think as well, the literature around athletes after they retire, once they don't have that athlete identity to kind of hang on to anymore, doesn't necessarily mean that the pressures around what they think that their bodies should look like, it doesn't mean that that's going to go away. And so then when you've got this little magic mirror of what you can, see what everybody else is looking like and doing and performing and all of that kind of stuff, I think kind of going in with the intention of finding authentic people who are being true to themselves, and then, taking that on for yourself. Probably better in the long run.
Hopefully. That's what we hope for.
That's what we hope. Yeah, absolutely. And back to body appreciation. Are there body appreciation, strategies or techniques that you use in your day-to-day life? Could be in competition or just outside of it.
Yeah, I think it's just now that I've like learned a little bit more about it and have my own critiques of the way we study body image and like what's been done in the past and the way that things are changing. I really try to focus on what my body is able to do and like all the functions that it can perform, whether that be literally in everyday life or just like these amazing things that I can do with my body when I'm competing or at the gym and just being strong. That really like helps me for the most part get over some of the appearance related things that pop into my head every once in a while, which again are normal. And I think just recognizing that like you can feel good about your body, but you can also have concerns about your body at the same time. And that's not a bad thing, and it's not a good thing. It's just how you feel.
Yeah, it's kind of just a check-in.
Exactly.
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and like sometimes you might feel a little bit worse and sometimes you might feel a little bit better. But I also think recognizing that like it's okay to feel bad, and if you're having a bad day with your body, like it's okay to talk about it too, because feeling validation from other people might help those things. So understanding that body appreciation is a thing, we can feel good about our bodies, but not shying away from the times when we do feel like a little bit worse or poorly about our bodies is okay too.
Yeah, and I think taking the approach almost of like mindfulness around like taking the judgment off of it, that it's like, okay, maybe I'm feeling a little bit more negative about XYZ on my body today.
Yeah.
But then not assigning that also then means that you're a bad person or
Right.
that, there's something wrong with you or that you need to fix it. It's like,
Yes.
okay, maybe I just, am unhappy with
Yeah.
whatever, and we're gonna move on.
Yeah.
And not make it any much of a bigger thing than that. And obviously that's easier said than done and
Absolutely.
something to practice at.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that ties in exactly with what you were saying of just, be honest with yourself. It's okay to have positive and negative days.
Yeah.
It happens.
It happens.
We all have them.
Yeah.
And are there skills from your life as an athlete that you see that you transfer into kind of your work with academia and in research?
Yeah, definitely. I think time management has been like the biggest skill I've learned. Dancing from a very young age, and just like, I mean, some weeks it's like 20 hours of dance a week. How do you have time to do anything else?
Yeah.
And I mean, school has always been very important to me. So I always wanted to do well in school, even in like elementary and high school and whatnot. Like that was important to me as well. So I really learned how to manage my time effectively to succeed in all the avenues that I wanted to pursue.
Yeah.
And I think another really big thing is learning how to present yourself in front of other people.
Yeah.
I mean, dance is obviously great. You're on stage, you've got tons of people watching you. Powerlifting, you're the only person on that platform. Everyone's
Right.
looking at you.
And you're in a singlet.
Yeah, Andrew in a singlet. Thank you for reminding me. And then, I mean, you go into academia and you go to a conference and you go to present your work. And again, there's tons of people in the audience and everybody's looking at you.
Yeah.
So learning how to stand up in front of a group of people and feel, I mean, you don't have to feel absolutely 100%, but feel confident that you can deliver the best product, whether it be research or lifting a deadlift, I think is like a really valuable skill that I've had come out of sport.
I would completely agree. Those are hugely valuable skills to have, especially, like we do a lot of presentations and things where we're talking to people. I recently back in September, gave a presentation at a conference where there were television screens, like big television screens of me as I was standing there presenting. And I was like, oh my God, like people are looking at me as myself, but then they're also looking at me on these gigantic screens where I'm like 30 feet tall.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I need to like snap out of it where I'm like worried about this because it did kind of remind me of when I used to compete. I competed just, in recreational levels of gymnastics and volleyball. And it reminded me of how when I would play volleyball, I wasn't bad. I was decent. I had fun. But anytime that I would serve, I made my parents look away. I didn't care if anybody else was looking at me, but I made my parents look away and I would check that they were not looking at me. And it's like a joke that like still goes on in my family, like however many years later, my mom's like, oh, remember when you made us look away? And I'm like, did I do better though? Yeah. But obviously, like that's not really a sustainable strategy. As people in research, it's like, yeah, you getting comfortable with being observed is helpful both in outside of sport life, but also for competition, kind of probably regardless of what sport you're in. Spectators are
There's always going to be people watching, whether it's your coach, other people on the other team. And I mean, I think like, thank you for sharing that because being in academia for X number of years, you still get, it's a little jarring sometimes.
It's very jarring. Yeah. Seeing it, there were two big screens and I was like, oh, there's two of them. It was fine. It went by obviously. And of course nobody said anything to me about my body, but I was aware, you know what I mean? Yeah. But practicing those non-judgmental strategies and bringing myself back to, all right, I've got a job to do.
Exactly.
And that carries through in sport as well. And you said you came from dance. Do you think that that's something you got comfortable with in dance, that having that shared stage and then moving into the solo platform, if you will?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I can't remember. I think the right amount of nerves are the perfect recipe.
Yeah. You want to care.
Yeah. You need to be a little nervous. It means that you care about what you're doing.
Yeah.
It means that you want to do well. But I think learning how to control those nerves so that they are manageable in any sense. And I learned it from a very young age. And it almost is less scary to present because I'm probably hopefully not going to trip and fall on my face, which would be more probable when I'm dancing, right?
Yes, you're probably not gonna like scrape your shins
Yeah.
as you're doing a presentation or
Yeah.
things like that. Stakes are lower in that
Yeah,
way.
exactly. But I mean, yeah, it gets you used to being in front of a group of
Yeah.
people and just having people look at you.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, as much as, I mean, we think that people are always looking at us, they're usually not.
They're so not.
Yeah. And
I mean, maybe in sport they are a little
Yeah.
bit more, but they're not. I don't think in general people look at us the way that we fear they are
Mhm.
or the way that we look at ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
So just being comfortable with being on a podium in front of a group of people is a great skill to have in academia.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a microphone shoved in your face as
Yeah.
well. Why not? So I have some kind of just general questions for you. Starting with growing up, who were your role models in sport? And what would you say to them now if you were able to meet them?
I loved like gymnastics growing up. Still do.
Yeah.
And Sean Johnson and Asya Lukin.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just think back to like Beijing,
Yep.
2008. I think they were, I mean, if we're talking about bodies, like they looked very different. And
Yeah.
that was like a really cool, not that I thought about it at the time, but it's like, oh, we have two very diverse bodies competing in the same sport and being super successful.
Mhm.
And I think, I mean, I've listened to them talk about it now, and obviously they were fierce competitors, and
Yes.
there's only one person that can be at the top of that podium.
Yep.
But they think they handle themselves with such grace at such a young age. And I think that's really admirable when we think about like women's sports, and we can be competitors and we don't have to be rude or judged. Like there doesn't have to be competition
Yeah.
outside of the field.
Outside of absolutely.
Right.
So if you knew that you could be successful at it, because I think that matters.
Yeah,
It matters
it
for
does.
me anyway. If you knew that you'd be successful at it, not necessarily, best in the world, but just decent enough at it.
Yeah.
What sport would you want to try?
I think I would want to do gymnastics.
Okay. Any particular event or just all of it?
Just the entire thing.
Okay.
I mean, I commend gymnasts for being able to fling themselves through the air and just make it look so graceful.
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a feat to accomplish with your body. And I think growing up, like being in dance, I was just like, oh, that would be so easy. And then you slowly realize that, like, no, it is actually probably very difficult. So I think
definitely.
Yeah, I think it would be fun to try, but I think the key is if I could be successful, it would be really cool to be successful in gymnastics.
Absolutely. I think any of the sports where they are kind of flying around a little bit, I think like figure skating as well.
Yeah.
Where it looks easy,
Yes.
you're like, okay, that's how you know that it is
Yes.
so difficult.
Yes.
And that these are truly the best people
100%.
at it. Yeah. What do you think you'd be best at in gymnastics? What event would you dominate?
I want to say bars because I enjoy bench press and I feel like that's a lot of upper body strength.
Yeah.
So like I feel like that would be my event.
Yeah, there you go. You're the bar specialist. Look out, world. So I want to talk to you about a gold medal moment. So a gold medal moment just being a moment or an achievement that stands out to you inside or outside of sport that you'll just always bring with you. What's your gold medal moment?
That would have to be this past summer, defending my master's thesis.
Yes, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that.
Thank you. Again, like we were just talking about standing up in front of a bunch of people. That was a very small room. There weren't that many people there, but all eyes were on me to say what I had learned. And I mean, yeah, super special moment to successfully do that.
Especially now that they're back to being in person for things. I defended my master's online.
Very interesting.
And it was, I'm sure, a very different experience as far as the pressures and things like that. Because I was just in my bedroom. I was wearing sweatpants.
Oh.
And my roommate's cat was with me. And that was my master's defense. And I just, at the end of it, closed my laptop and I was like, I'm done now.
I did it.
Whereas it sounds like if you were in a room with people, you get that kind of shared excitement. People are excited for you. People are happy for you.
Yeah, but they're also like staring you down and you can like the energy in the room is palpable.
There's that too.
I mean, I'm assuming everyone had their camera on, so you could see them watching you kind of.
By committee,
right?
yeah.
By committee.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just yeah, I think that's like a really awesome gold medal achievement, and
yeah,
I got to do it again many more times. So
yeah, absolutely. And then a few years come to your PhD defense, and that'll be really fun as well.
Can't wait.
It'll be great. New gold medal moment to look forward to. What hopes do you have and what changes do you want to see for the future of women's sport?
I think we've made some really great strides in the last couple of years. And I mean, let's obviously keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
I think one thing that would be lovely would be to see more women in positions of power on sports teams, head coaches, like just to see an all women's bench, I think is such a cool thing to look on the TV and when you're watching women's sport. But also remembering that there's so many roles in sport other than the coaches. And I mean, women can do all of those roles as well. So just, I think that would be so awesome to see. And then also just, yeah, keeping this momentum going so that women don't have to be dual career athletes and they can put all of their time and energy into their sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be so amazing.
Yeah.
To see. I hope maybe there are some strides being made there. I hope. What message would you like to share with girls in sport who are maybe struggling with their body image and maybe that's leading them to think about leaving sport?
I think thinking about kind of like I mentioned before, like what your body can do and that sport has given you the tools to do all these wonderful things with your body is something to think about and be grateful for and appreciate when you might be feeling that way. And I mean, it's obviously we don't want anyone to feel that way, but I think it is the nature of living in society and having a body and just seeing different things around the body. So yeah, just remember that your body can do all these amazing things regardless of what it looks like. And if you are struggling, whether that be pressure that you're putting on yourself, pressure from other people inside of sport or outside of sport, just remember that there's someone to talk to and that you don't have to go through those things alone. Because I think a lot of people think, or it is stigmatized to talk about I'm struggling with my body.
Yeah.
So people, it's just easier to drop out. So look for those people that you can talk to, who you can have those honest conversations with.
Yeah.
Would be what I would say.
Amazing. That's going to help someone out there, I'm sure. I'm
I
sure.
hope so.
Well, Izzy, do you have anything coming up that you'd like to share with us that we can look out for?
Competition wise, I think I don't have anything, I'm not registered, but my goal for the year was to at least register for a competition and like put it on the horizons. I do have a publication coming out. I don't know when. It was accepted, so once it gets turned around.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Very exciting.
Yes. So that was my master's thesis. So again, looking at the association between losing weight for competition and various outcomes. And I think that's my main thing that's coming out soon.
Amazing. Can't wait to read it.
Yes, thank you.
Very excited.
I'll be sure to share it.
Perfect. And where can people go to stay in touch with you, see what you're up to, follow your journey in sports?
Yeah, so I typically post on my powerlifting Instagram, which is Stronger with IT. And I mean, send me a message, whatever, we can chat. I'm happy to talk all things body image, women's sport, and everything that's related to that.
Amazing. Well, Izzy, thank you so much for being again the first guest on Gold Medal Girls.
Thank
As
you.
your friend, colleague, everything. I'm so grateful for you.
Well, I'm so glad that you started this and that we were able to have this conversation today.
Thank you so much. A huge thank you to Izzy Tremonte again for joining me for the first episode of Gold Medal Girls. You can find her on Instagram at Stronger with IT, which is also listed in the show notes. Another huge thank you to Josh Halliday for the Gold Medal Girls music and to the Women's Sports Podcast Network. Last and certainly not least, thank you for listening to Gold Medal Girls. Please rate and review the show wherever you watch or listen and give us a follow on social media at goldmedalgirlspod on Instagram and at goldmedalgirls on TikTok. You can visit goldmedalgirls.com for more about the show or email me at goldmedalgirlspod@gmail.com if you're a woman in sport and would like to be featured on an episode. See you next time.